Do you want to learn to get from something like this to something like this? When you're getting a brand new drone, all the stick controls and the gimbal movements and all that stuff is pretty stuck and very, very rough and not very suited for doing cinematic recordings. So you've got to trim in those to get the best result. I know that the settings that you probably prefer would differ from the ones that I've been using, but at least in this video I will show you what I do as a baseline when I break in a new drone, so to speak. Any jerky or fast movement will basically ruin the quality of your shots. There's basically two main areas that we want to look into. One of them is the gimbal tilt. We want to make sure that that one is limited in speed and make sure that it lands softly when you let go of the sticks. The rotation of the drone, that needs to be slowed down as well. As well as we can play around with the sensitivity of the sticks, making it less sensitive when you are around the center of the stick, exaggerating the movement when you're going towards the ends. And those are called the expo or exponential settings. Let's get the drone airborne first. So you see, as it is right now, if I just use the drone here, see that the gimbal motion here looks very rough. Also when I rotate here, doesn't look very good. And so if I want to do, like, let's say I want to do a manual point of interest around the car here, it's very difficult because the sticks are not really trimmed in for this purpose. If we start by trimming the gimbal settings, we go under the three dots in the upper right corner here, and then we go under control, and then we scroll down here to advanced gimbal settings. And here you will basically have three set of parameters, each for one for each flight mode. So there will be one for the cinematic mode, one for the normal mode, and one for the sport mode. And with those you can trim or set the parameters that we need. And in this case we want to trim the cine mode. So I just scroll down to the section that is related to the cine mode. And what I can do here, just to show you, if I put the pitch speed up here to full throttle here, you can see that if I do this, the motion will be very, very crazy. And if I go in here again and reduce that to around 10 degrees per second, you can see that it's much more controlled when I roll up and down here on the gimbal wheel. The same happens here if we can set the pitch smoothness. That one dictates how rough the gimbal stops. So you can see here, if I let go of the wheel now, you see it stops right away. We don't want that. We want the gimbal to do a soft land. So we can control that by putting the gimbal smoothness up to maybe 25. So when I move it here and I let go of the sticks, you can see that it continues the motion, but it stops very softly. So this is basically what we want out of that part. And then we have the rotation, and even in cine mode where it is reduced, it's still too fast for my sort of likings. So if I go under the three dots here, I can adjust the rotation speed. Again, if I put it up to 90 degrees per rotation, you can see, oh man, it goes around, it goes around, it goes around, it goes around. It doesn't look very good. So what we want to do here is we basically want to crank that down to 10 degrees per second, the lowest possible rotation speed. And because we are rotating so slow, yeah, we can set the yaw smoothness up to 25, but it doesn't really matter because we are rotating now so slow that it's the camera feed is lagging a little bit. I hope it's a lot better in real life. So, but this is what we can do. We can reduce this as much as possible. And the key trick here for really cinematic good settings is to reduce the rapid motions. And you can do this in some of the other flight modes as well. But I do want to recommend that you keep sport mode to the stock settings or maybe even faster. So if you want to fly around, you have sort of the stock settings that will allow you to do whatever you need to do. And then when you need to record, you flick it back into cine mode or into normal mode. And now we're getting a strong wind warning. This is quite sensitive to strong wind, the Mini 3. At least the one that I have. But that's a different story. All right, so now we have the gimbal motion under control. We have the yaw motion of the drone under control. So now we need to take a closer look at the stick sensitivity. And we can do that by scrolling down to the bottom here. There's a tab that's called Advanced, or a point that's called Advanced. And here you can see the Expo settings. And the Expo settings is really, really nice. That's also called S-curves for those of you that have been in the RC world for many years. And basically the idea behind that is that the normal stick response is that it's basically linear. If you move this one stick to the outer position, the response will be linear. So what you can do here is you can introduce an S-curve. And that basically means that the stick will be less sensitive when you're around the center here, and it will be exponentially magnified, what you can say, when you move it to the edge. So if I just take my yaw motion and then I make it flat, and I make basically all of them as flat as possible. If I just keep the yaw stick here very slowly, you can see that it turns, but if I pull it to the side, it will move faster. Basically as fast as we set it under the advanced gimbal settings. So if I just want a very, very subtle movement, I don't press the stick all the way to the side. And you want the curve as flat as possible. So maybe this is a little bit too rough. So let's try these settings and see how they work. So let's see if we can reproduce the point of interest here that I did in the beginning. So I just starting to move this in this direction. So you can see here, it requires a little bit of practice, but it is possible to move now very, very smooth around the car by just flying it manually. It's difficult to have it completely dead center, but at least you know what I mean now. In general, these are the parameters that you want to adjust to make sure that your footage is smooth. Then there's all the stuff with the ND fillers and the shutter speed that will prevent you from having jerkiness in your footage. At least one area that's really important to get under control is the stick input. We could do a very, very nice one, like a top-down shot. It's always very, very nice. And when we go up, we can turn the drone. And because we have controlled the yaw motion, you can see that it will happen very, very soft and very slowly. And this is an awesome shot to introduce or include in your in your work. So before we run out of juice, see if we can do world premiere, first ever roof landing with the DJI Mini 3. Let me just pull up the parameters so you can see what I ended up using. These parameters is of course individual, and I might change them once I get started, but at least these will give you something to start out with. Don't push them completely down to 0.1. I think you would find that very odd, and the drone's behavior would feel very odd if you do something like that. And again, you have, like we saw with the gimbal settings, you have like the 3 modes, so you can adjust the stick input depending on the flight mode that you prefer to use. So that part is of course super nice and convenient. Let me re-emphasize, keep sport mode as it is, so you at least have one mode where the sticks are responding very fast in case that you run into problems. You don't want to fight your cinematic settings if you're fighting, let's say, strong winds or stuff like that. Let's go back to the advanced gimbal settings just to show you where we ended up here in cine mode. We had like 10 degrees per second for pitch speed. Pitch smoothness is 25. Yaw rotation speed as low as possible, 10 degrees per second as well. And then the yaw smoothness doesn't really matter, but for the sake of it, we put that to 25 as well. So this will at least be my starting point going out flying with this drone. I do want to say that the stick setup on this one is way more elegant than what we have seen on the other drones. So it will take a little bit getting used to flying this perfectly from here. But there's no way around getting outside and getting your hands dirty to improve your skills. You simply need to get some flight time to improve your skills. Are you still on the fence with the DJI Mini 3 Pro? Don't be, as I've made a ton of videos about this drone, and I will make even more in the future. And I've included all those videos to give you more information in this playlist. I hope you liked this video. If you did, then feel free to give it a like. If you didn't like it, feel free to press the dislike button twice. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you around.